Hello and welcome to another video. Today I changed up my mic settings, so I might have more noise or whatever, but people were saying that it was too quiet, so we're trying this for a video, I suppose. So today the plan is to go over these 5 core things. You can skip ahead if you prefer to just watch some of them, though I will say that every one of them is something that's useful to know regardless of what role you play. And all of the laning ones will be transferable to the other roles, but the point is that that role is the one where I see this as having the most importance. So we're gonna start with jungle role, because I haven't been making jungle content the last videos, I believe, except for the Rengar VOD review, and I feel like it's perhaps time to make one that's more jungle focused. So here I'm going to be talking about level 3 gank / invade junglers against full clear junglers like, for example, Evelynn. On Evelynn, this is going to be a very common game plan, and if you're a fan of Evelynn, then this should be a weapon in your repertoire. So the example clear here is going to be that our Evelynn just full clears, and the enemy jungler does some kind of tree camp, whatever that may be, whether that be his red side cleared and then going bot lane, or his red raptor's grump path or whatever else. But the point is he started opposite from us, and now he's appearing bot lane. So the scenario here is that his gank failed and he didn't really get anything, and now he's just kind of like a bit depressed, and we get scuttle, and we also get like a top gank with a wave shove out, and we got our perfect start, right? Full clear, gank, kill, wave, whatever. Now the question is, how do we transfer this into a completely winning game? Because here there are patterns where we can legit just end the game for the enemy. And it doesn't actually matter if it's like a full clear or a tree camp jungler in this case. Because in this case, it's not relevant. Because if it's a full clear jungler and he failed the bot gank anyway, and he lost a lot of time, then the same thing kind of happens. But I'm just going to say it's a full or a tree camp jungler, so that they have a bit more counterplay. So we're going to start with this, and then now after we get to base, because we need to base right afterwards, right? And let's say the enemy jungler also arrived at base, whatever. What is the next play is the big question here. And for Evelynn, the next play is to just clear. Because once you've cleared all of your camps again, and even preferably if the enemy jungler did something like some kind of like this shit clear, where he didn't even do his red side camps, and you steal his camps at some point, that's even better. But the likely scenario against a tree camp jungler is that he either ends up doing, after his gank, he ends up doing these camps anyway for whatever reason, and then he bases or he walks here. And either way, this is very good for you, because if he bases, he's going to be late here, and after you do these 2 camps, because you should be faster than him, because he wastes a lot of time bot side, and then if he did the scuttle, then you should be able to get an advantage on time, right? After that, you go to his camps and you take these, or you fight him on these camps, and you're going to have a huge advantage because of items, because of levels, and even though you might think, I'm Evelynn, I'm weak early, you still beat most champions in the game if you're like a level up and you got a base off and they didn't. You just beat them. There's like no beating you. But the crucial thing here is that we do our camps, and maybe like enemy camps and maybe like gank and whatever, but the moment when we get level 6, we're actually invading. Like this is what a lot of Evelynn players and stuff miss, and a lot of full player junglers in general miss this. When you are level 6 and the enemy isn't, you just have to invade. And you can basically predict based on what champion I put here. I don't want to put a champion because then a lot of people will misconstrue this and try to apply it to this specific matchup. But no matter what champion you are, you should be able to simply predict what the enemy's path is because of the way that the champions work, because they can only do certain things, and then punish them either here or here. And there is no reason why this shouldn't work at all, unless all of the lanes look like this. If all of the lanes look like this, okay, it can be a bit awkward. On Evelynn it can still work because you're stealth, but on a lot of other champs it might not work, right? Like I wouldn't really want to do this on Cortis against like hard roaming laners. So this is the first thing I wanted to talk about. Here you can very easily, from the XP lead that you have, predict what the enemy jungler can do in the next 5 minutes due to the camps that you know are up. Because you know whether he did this clear or he did this, or if he did some kind of this clear. And based on that, you will know which camps are up. And that's going to be like pretty much his sequence. And at some points into jungling, you will find out what the sequence of the enemy jungler is. Like when he is here, you find out what sequence he took until now. After he does like the scuttle and whatever, you will then do some kind of a telling little probe, most likely, where you either ward against him, whether you warded on your first clear and your second, or like a little invade, like I said here, right? Where you just go here at some point because of advantage in tempo and try to take his respawn camp or his level 1 camp or whatever it is. And at some point you will find out what his exact sequence is. And if you can find out his exact sequence, you're going to pretty much know what the enemy jungler can do in a pretty much 5-minute time span. Obviously, sometimes he can just flip a gank that makes 0 sense, but most of those are pretty obvious based on the way the lanes are playing. Like, if the lanes are playing like this, and he's somewhere here, like, he might just swap bot lane, obviously, right? This can happen, but you can have a very high accuracy of prediction. So this is the jungle tip. I don't want to go too specific, because as I said, then people will apply it to only one matchup, and I think this is just a concept to look out for and to think about. And if you're a laner, then this is also something to think about, because if the enemy jungler got a lead, that means that you can now, for example, as a mid laner, realize, okay, well, on the second buff, it would be pretty good for me to have prio, and to like check it out a bit, right? So nothing happens. So that's something you can figure out, and you can also, or not even check it out, you can just be ready to move. Okay, so let's proceed with the second rule. In top lane, the thing that I want to point out are bad kills and good deaths. So in top lane, you might think that every kill is a good kill. But contrary to popular belief, kills aren't actually worth that much in top lane. Obviously, they're still good, don't get me wrong. But if you solo kill the enemy laner, and you solo kill them right here, and the wave is made where it's going to push into the enemy, and the enemy has TP and you don't, this is going to end up being a bad kill. Most of the time, pretty much. Especially if you're squishy or the enemy like can fight you in any way. Like if you hard stomp the enemy, it's probably going to be fine. But if you don't hard stomp the enemy, it's just going to be really bad. Because the issue is, you can't push this wave, so you're going to be forced to just instantly base. Most of you aren't even going to accept this base, you're going to try to push the wave anyway. Then you're going to just have him freeze here, and then you're going to lose even more. But the correct play in this situation, and bot lane also, this is the same thing. After a play happens and you have no HP and the enemy is going to come back to lane, you have to just base on a slow push. You have to base and just accept that you will lose some. There's nothing else you can do. You base, you accept that you got a small win, and then you walk back to lane. And the issue is that the slow push is still like this. You lost less now, but the wave is still going to be here. And if your jungler doesn't help you and the enemy jungler like decides to play here and your jungler decides to play like here, like this is going to be very rough now. Very rough. Because it's just going to be unplayable for you. You're going to lose XP. And at some point it's just going to be doomed. This is why a lot of what the boss does can work. Because he plays retard champs that don't let you push, and then he artificially can also make this happen a lot. Because, for example, Sion passive, like, you can't really walk into melee of that usually. And he can also clear waves and whatever. And it's really hard for you to just crash. So it's very annoying. And so this is the main takeaway on top lane. It's kind of short, but I mean, I can just give you more examples. Like, if you kill the enemy like here, it's usually going to be fine. If you kill the enemy next to their tower, it's usually going to be really good. Though you do have to keep in mind that if you kill the enemy next to their tower, it's going to be the mid lane concept, which I will talk about soon. While if you kill the enemy close to your tower, you only really get this horde punish in top lane because of the TP summoner spell. In mid lane also people can take TP, but in mid lane the lane is so short that this doesn't really happen. So this is the key thing for top lane. I think this happens the most in top lane, then it happens somewhat in bot lane, and mid lane it rarely happens really, that you have a bad kill. Okay, next is mid lane. So in mid lane, what we're going to talk about is roam timers. A lot of you probably hate playing against these pesky assassins like Kiana, Fizz, Zed, Talon, whatever else, these champions, Katarina. You know, the champions where you bully them all lane, you're winning lane, and then suddenly they roam bot lane, they get a double kill, and then suddenly you're like, what the fuck, guys? So here I will outline the two biggest mistakes that people make against these champions. The first one is managing the first waves until level 3-4 in a way where either they get level 3 on a bounce and you're level 2 against them being level 3 and the wave is bouncing back to you and you suddenly can't play, and they get to push the wave for free because if you walk up to the wave you're going to get either chunked or killed or whatever else, and then suddenly they get either a free base or a free roam or whatever else, and this is Monka. Though I will say that a lot of you just get chunked or die on this, so something to keep in mind. Though the level 2 versus level 3 one isn't as common as the level 3 versus level 4 one. This is the one that even better players fuck up, let's say. Because what happens is they think, okay, I'm level 3 against level 3, but then the slow push happens anyway, and the same concept happens. And because they're level 4, a lot of these champions get pretty strong at level 4. Like Zed, for example, he gets 2 points in Q, and it's gonna do quite a bit more damage if he hits both of them. This is the bonus tip for mid lane against these champions, but this tip is pretty much for every lane, like also ADC and top lane, though it's more of a free base thing in top and ADC rather than a free roam thing. And in mid lane also it's often a free base. But the main thing that I want to talk about is getting baited by plates. So this is what happens the most to people, and basically you kill the enemy mid laner or something, or you force him out of lane, whatever, you crash the wave, and then you decide to take like 2 plates, and the enemy mid laner gets to here. Then you decide to go here, and the enemy mid laner gets to here. And then you base, then you're in base, and the enemy mid laner is like in mid lane. And now suddenly they like slow push 2 waves or whatever, like they just stack up 2 waves, they crash them. And like you're like here, and they're like, they crash the wave, and you're like, okay, I'm getting the waves, it's all good, it's all fine and dandy. So this is a trap where people don't even realize they made a mistake because they think, okay, I got all the CS, if no one dies to them right now, I'm getting pretty ahead, I also got a free plate, and I'm doing pretty good. But the issue is these retard champions like Katarina, Kiana, whatever else, now these fucking retards, they just walk like this. And you can ping your bot lane 50 times. If your bot lane's wave is like here, they aren't that likely to back off. And if your jungler's topside, that's probably going to be a Kiana double kill. If you don't ping it, it's for sure going to be a Kiana double kill. Let's be honest here. But if you do ping it, then maybe it is, maybe it's not. But either way, your bot lane is getting fucked by this, because your bot lane is going to lose like 2 waves here for you to have gotten 1 plate. And you could have gotten that plate later anyway, most likely, right? So this is the biggest thing that I see happen to mid laners, where they get baited by this, and then you're like farming, and then you're like pushing. But then the issue is that after you've pushed out, like enemy Kiana or whatever, they got a double kill, and they either walked back or they base, and then they come back, and they don't really lose much for this. Like, for your 175 gold, you risked them getting 600 gold in bot lane. So, you know, that's a bit of a bait. This is most common in mid lane. Second most common, I think it would be in bot lane, because once you crash, if you stay for the wave too long, the enemy will like push out or whatever. And oftentimes when they base, their support gets like a roam timer on bot or on mid, or on top or on mid. And if you stayed for like a plate or 2, then oftentimes what will happen is you will like come back to lane, but enemy support can like go top, and then they can go mid, and then they can come bot, and they will be in time anyway. Because maybe the enemy ADC just got to free crash the wave anyway, because you just stayed so long, right? Like if the enemy ADC is here and you just like took the plate and you're like basing now, they just push, and then now they crashed, and like you're like here and they crashed, and now like you get to the crash and blah blah and you got it. But now look, enemy ADC can just chill. They can go base, they can like sit in their tower, they can do whatever the fuck they want. They can fight you, I don't know. It's up to them, whatever they do. But you will now slow push, because if you just fast push, it does nothing, because fast pushing one wave won't even let you dive them usually, because either they can walk away or they can just kill the wave. So you're gonna need to like slow push, and your support has time to maybe like do one roam, but enemy support has time for like 2 roams or something. And it's not a nice place to be in, and also enemy gets to lane for free. In top lane, this can also sometimes happen, but I think in top lane it's the least common, and in top lane plates are often pretty valuable, so in top lane it's not that bad. They don't usually roam. The main thing here is that if you lose like 10 waves, or the only real issue here is if the enemy top laner just walks and kills your jungler or something. Okay, so we're going on to the next one. On ADC focus, we have recall timers. Part of this is obviously the plate thing, but on ADC I want to go more in depth on the rest of the recall timer idea. Because on ADC it's really important to recall on good timers. I think that's one of the biggest fundamentals of that role, where you want slow push and crash. That's like the most important thing in ADC. You don't really want to freeze. Like sometimes you can freeze to build a small advantage, but freezing is only good if you're like early level, or if you see the enemy retard ADC and support. Maybe I should stop calling them retards. Like the enemy special guy on ADC and support. These people, like, you need to see them be here, like somewhere in lane. Because if you don't see these two, like what a lot of people will do is just run mid lane or something and just gank your mid laner. And you might think this is worth it, like just don't die bro, just don't die, but it's just not. You need to freeze for 1.5 minutes to make up for 1 kill. If they spend like 2 minutes just running around the map and just like ganking random shit, don't even mention the fact that they're denying your teammates like gold from jungle camps or waves or whatever. If they just spend this time and just kill one teammate, your freezing already was not worth it. So in solo queue, freezing is really meh. It's only done in like early levels and when you really need to and whatever. Because early levels, they don't have XP, so then don't have all of their spells. If they don't have all of their spells, these let's call them little funny guys, won't do this usually. So then in ADC you want to slow push and crash, and the most important thing is also that you make sure you're always basing on cannon, because if you don't base on cannon, you can base when it's not cannon and sometimes you're gonna get forced to, but if you don't base on cannon on ADC, you lose like the most, because you're the most gold dependent role. So if you like slow push and crash and you realize that you messed up and the next wave is like a regular wave, it's fine. Like if you have the HP and the mana, you can stay and then you can push the next wave fast and then you base. And then the next wave after that should be cannon. And now you got a way better base than if you based on the last wave when it was a slow push and people like might tell you, just base on the slow push, bro. No, just base on cannon. That's all you need to do. But it's going to be a bit suspect when the enemy ADC is some champ with a really disgusting wave clear, and the enemy support also. Like if you play against, I don't know, Brand fucking Tristana, like good luck. She's going to bomb the wave and he's going to W and E the wave, and they will probably crash even though it's cannon. So if you don't slow push that, it's going to be interesting. But against most ACs, it's fine. And I was going to mention one more thing, but I kind of spaced out and forgot. Right. You have to keep in mind the thing where we talked about good and bad deaths. In bot lane, it's oftentimes going to end up being something like your jungler ganks, you kill the enemy, and maybe you had like a freeze or something going, or enemy was like slow pushing and then they got ganked on their slow push and they died. If you're like low HP now or whatever, and like let's say one of them survived, let's say the ADC survived but the support died and the ADC had to like blow flash or something, but he's like full HP or whatever, and you're like lower HP, and let's say you killed enemy support and jungler or something, I don't know, like these two are both in base, like if you're low HP and your support is low HP and you're, let's say your jungler died, you can't like slow push, even though you want to like slow push and crash and then base. Oftentimes, like you always want to do that, like you can't. You just have to accept a bad base right now. It's not even really a bad base, but like you have to accept a suboptimal base so that you don't get a really bad base later. Because if you try to push now and you get frozen on here, that's really disgusting, man. Like you will have to base on a freeze, you will lose a lot, and you will get ganked on their freeze if you don't call your like jungler or something. So these are the two really big things on ADC that I wanted to talk about, but both focus around recalls. And then, since we're talking so much about recalls and roams and like when, well, basically this whole video is based around roams and recalls mostly, and like timings, we're now going to talk about a general support game plan, because I gave an ADC game plan before, but it was a pretty long one. But for support, I'm going to say what your general game plan is in terms of just playing the game. So we're going to say that you're the support that just crossed the wave. You're ADC based. If you're full HP and mana, you're going to go mid if it's early game. Like say it's like level 3, level 4, whatever. If you're full HP, full mana, you don't need to base, you're going to go mid and you're going to gank mid. And if it's getting closer to like 6 minutes, 7 minutes, if you crash at like 7 minutes, you're either going to like just run mid and gank it, if you have full HP and mana and don't need items, or if you do, then you're going to base and you're going to run to Herald anyway. And at 8 minutes, you will just, as the winning support, as the one that got like crash off and whatever, and the one that has an advantage in tempo. On support, it's pretty important to learn about tempo. When you will be somewhere faster in the enemy support and you have more time and whatever, you will show up to Herald at 8 minutes. And if you show up to Herald at 8 minutes and win bot lane in most of your games, then I guarantee on support you will climb. It's just spamming Herald, ask your jungler to get it. This is 300 gold, this is a free kill. Plus plates, it can just take a fucking tower for free. And there is no way that if enemy support, like, either after this crash, they're either going to slow push and the enemy support helps the ADC push, or the enemy support is a bit smarter and he just like bases because he realizes that you two both based. If they have like decent vision, maybe they have like vision also. This is also important vision to deny, like you can sweep it or whatever. So it's even scarier for enemy to play. It's even more likely for the enemy support to stay. But if they don't stay, they're still so late, so late. And if you go with your jungler and your jungler just takes his hero and mid and top are at least somewhat even, you will just get this. You will get 300 gold. You will get at least 2 plays. So this is like a 600 gold play by minimum. And most likely enemy is going to contest it also, but they're contesting it like jungler 1v4 or like 3v4 or whatever. And you're almost always going to win this. So this is the most important 2 plans for support, where after crashing, you have to really decide roam or base, right? But basing on support is whatever. And usually, and also don't just autopilot from bot lane, please. Like, at least walk like this always, and then you can like ward river or something. I mean, sometimes you have to walk straight bot lane if they're like threatening like crashing 3 waves and they're going to try to dive your ADC and whatever. But most of the time, just walk something like this, get some vision out, sweep, whatever. Like maybe you will counter gank, maybe you will gank, whatever else. But if at 7 minutes or so you manage to crash and you have good HP and you get to gank mid lane, this is pretty much guaranteed. There's almost no way you will ever lose this if you also ganked mid lane right before. So this is my my little game plan thing for support, where you can win a lot more games if you focus on doing this at that timer. So maybe like try to ask your ADC to push at that time, maybe try to make it happen in a way, or maybe just avoid inting right before it. Either way, that's all for this video. Let me know if you enjoyed it or if I need to change something. Maybe I have too much background noise now, I'm not sure. I will post the video anyway, but if I do, then I'll change something next time. And yeah, like and subscribe, and see you next time.